This broadcast of In Focus has been made possible through the support of the Richmond Art Museum. Mark your calendar for June 27th and 28th to enjoy the annual Secret Garden Tour. Take in beautiful local gardens and be sure to check out the Garden Boutique, featuring unique ironwork for your garden landscaping needs. For more information, visit richmondartmuseum.org. Welcome to this episode of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of WCTV. Glad you're able to join us for what hopefully will be an interesting hour of conversation with Richmond Mayor Dave Snow. Thanks for joining me. We are obviously in the mayor's office, as we cannot still record in the WCTV studio, although I will have you in the studio shortly, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Need to remind you that if you are planning to vote in person, Tuesday is the day. That is now primary election day here in Richmond. So as you can see on the screen, there are locations as to where you can vote from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Those locations are going to be open. Join us that Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. as we kind of do our In Focus election special a little bit differently. Normally we invite candidates and people who will be on the ballot in November, and family and friends and media and some of everybody else out to the studio at IU East. That is not possible this year. We will not be having a watch party at WCTV. We will be doing the In Focus election special, again with our partners being Hometown Media Group and the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. My special in-studio guest will be Richmond Mayor Dave Snow and Wayne County Commissioner Ken Poust. I think we covered both the city side and the county side and the Democrat side and the Republican side and all the other sides that need to be dealt with that personally I don't care about. But we will talk about some things. They don't know it yet, but they will be taking questions from you. So we'll have a chance to talk about what kind of community we want to be. And I think election night would probably be a great night to do that. So we'll have some other conversations via Zoom and also recording. So I hope you will join us. Hopefully you'll get out on election day and vote. And then join us beginning at 6 p.m. on WGTV Channel 11 and streaming on Facebook for our In Focus election special. Mayor, thanks for having us in your office.
Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk to somebody. That's a nice treat, right? Yeah. I know when we initially talked about this, there was the proposal to do this via Zoom.
Correct.
And it just seems so, it's okay for meetings and things, but for us to have the conversations that we typically have, it seemed a little cold. So thanks for coming in and setting up here, and it's just nice to sit down and chat with somebody. But we're making this work. We've got the social distancing in place.
We've got the space going.
Yeah.
Ryan Harris, who has been directing In Focus programs since we started In Focus programs, always makes things like this work. So
he did make it work, and I think it's working well.
Thanks for having us in. Always good to talk to you. We probably haven't spoken as much this year as we might normally because of what's going on. So let's kind of get some of the pandemic stuff out of the way.
Sure.
It obviously affected the ability to have the Memorial Day celebration, both at Earlham and down in the Veterans Park, which is highly unfortunate. It is affecting a number of things throughout the community. Talk a little bit about the business community, how they've been affected, what the city has been working to try to do as far as grants and things to kind of help businesses, particularly in that center city area.
Sure. There's so much to talk about on that front, and so we may have to take it in little pieces. You had mentioned Memorial Day ceremony there. It's so unfortunate to have this affect that very important ceremony. So just yesterday, I made a phone call to Ron Wiedek and with our local veterans who usually plays a role in putting on that ceremony. We talked it through and ended up inviting Al Bledsoe to come into the building, and Reverend Chappelle, and he came in, and we held a little miniature Memorial Day ceremony on video that we'll put out for Memorial Day weekend. And so it was a good way to still honor that day, honor those veterans, honor their families. It was a small way. We would have preferred to have done just the three of us down in Veterans Park outside.
Right.
But it was raining. So on top of the global pandemic, on top of all the restrictions, we have this very late fall that won't seem to go away. It's raining, it's windy, it's not really warming up very well. So we shot the whole thing inside. So you'll be seeing that pretty soon. Starting to unpack the COVID-19 situation, where to begin. The amount of stress that we're all feeling and the anxiety has had such an impact, I think, on all of us. This is an unprecedented time. This is something that none of us have ever dealt with, and it's caused all of us to feel a lot of stress and pressure and anxiety on being concerned about our own health, our family's health, our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers, and it's been a difficult time, especially as we all try to figure out the best way to navigate through this and the best way to learn from it once we kind of get to the other side. And we talk about the other side, but we don't know what that looks like. Will this die down a bit in the summer and resurge in the fall, or will it not? Will this be something that resurges every year? We deal with flu shots and flu season now. Everyone's trying to figure that out. So I want to make sure that I'm starting at the beginning here and kind of bringing us up to where we are today. We started early with...
We're not going to take 90 minutes, but we'll take the hour.
Okay, all right. We started early with our first executive order, and it's important to point out here in this stage, as we're talking about the very beginning of this, that I just can't say enough for how well all of the elected officials and city team and county team have all worked so well together. The county commissioners, the county council, city council, my office, and then all of our teams in each of the buildings. There's also a pandemic task force that meets 3 times a week with representatives from Red Cross, extended care facilities, Wayne EMA, the hospital, and we're all on those calls all together 3 times a week. There's been business task force put together by the chamber that's been meeting. There's just been so many groups that have all been coming together and working so well together, and then taking our advisement from the state and our healthcare professionals. So right at the early onset of this, if you recall from our first press conference, we talked about getting word from our healthcare professionals that it was time to take some action because we were seeing a spike, we were seeing it happen. And that's how we've been operating. We as elected officials need to look to our healthcare professionals that are monitoring the data and the information and the medical side of this to say, here's the tools that you have in your toolkit to have the best effect for public health and public safety. And we take that and turn into deliberation and then create an executive order. So we created our first executive order that resulted in then a second executive order. Now we're on our third, and the third executive order that we're in now stays in lockstep with the state's 5-phase reopening plan, Back on Track Indiana. So where we are today, the travel restrictions have been lifted. We were at one point on an essential travel only restriction that went away as we moved into the state's 5-phase plan. On Monday, or on Sunday rather, the May 24th, we move into phase 3 of that 5-phase plan. So we're phasing back into that. It has had a huge effect on businesses, the way people live their lives, the way people navigate around the city, and one of the aspects we talk about a lot is just the people's confidence. Do people feel safe now going to the store, going to the grocery, going to a department store, going to gatherings? So there's a twofold piece here, and it is making sure that we're playing a role in assisting the businesses as they try to rebound and get back on their feet after this big slowdown and shutdown, and also ensuring the confidence in the public. They have to be sure of the environment before they want to go back out and go into stores and go into restaurants. And so it's a two-pronged effort. Using the data, using the testing that's in place so that the medical professionals can give those advisements on the safest environment will reassure the consumer confidence. And then we have done a lot of work to provide grants and opportunities for these businesses to rebound as they get back up to running. So talking a little bit about that, we partnered with Center City Development Corporation to secure $250,000 from the Office of Community and Rural Affairs from the state. And that will go a long way in helping businesses secure up to $10,000 per business as they reestablish and rebound. We just passed the deadline for the first round of that, but there are still dollars available. You can find those resources on our website. We have secured CARES Act dollars that we're going to utilize along with the county. Our first step in that's going to be to buy face masks to provide to businesses as they reopen, so they don't have to incur those costs. So if a business was to reach out to local government and say, as I have customers coming in and I want them to wear masks, or I want my employees to wear masks, I need a supply of those, and I don't want to have to incur that cost, so we can supply those. We are looking as a city, just as a city alone, of purchasing up to 80,000 of those masks to have a huge stockpile to provide out to the community. We also just received a shipment from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, who was generous enough to provide free masks to mayors that wanted them. So we took the maximum allotment of 4,800. I just sent a shipment of 500 over to the county so they could use those as they reopen the courts. So they'll be using some of those, but I have them here as well for citizens or for businesses that need them. And as we start to get back to business here. Now the county is also setting up a county revolving loan fund and expanding that to use for small business. Right. And we are contributing $150,000 to that and earmarking that for use within the city, because the $250,000 that we secured through Center City Development comes with geographical boundaries, has to be in that Center City business district. We want to make sure there are dollars available outside of that. So since county is taking the lead on providing that funding, we're putting dollars in that as well. And then we are securing dollars within each of our departments for transit, for police, for fire, as they incur costs, and then tracking the revenue that we have lost as a city for reimbursement, because that is important to us. That's a part of our budget and how we provide services to the community. So those are some of the things we're doing, and I really consider all of that really just the very early stages of phase one. Sure. There's going to be more. There's going to be more things we're going to be able to do, more tools we're going to have, and dollars that we'll have to do that. But we're in the very beginning stages here as businesses begin to reopen and figure out what that environment's going to look like. We want to be here and ready as their needs, as their wants and needs change, because we know that's going to happen. It's one thing to say we're ready to reopen and we need masks and we need hand sanitizer, that there will be small businesses that just may need some remodeling and some other assistance as they really kind of get going in the new way we're going to be living, and we want to be able to help through some of that too. Providing consultation or providing assistance in that area. So it's a lot. It's been a lot to digest. It's been a lot to handle every day. We have 400 employees, and so keeping our team safe as they've been working, that's a lot of work as well. But that's what we're all going through. To me, that's one of the most important things that any of us can remember through this entire crisis, is that we are facing an equal biological threat that's on all of us. We're really very much in this together. I know you've seen the billboards and the slogans, but we are very much all in this together, and working together and realizing that we're all in the same situation is really important.
There's a couple of pieces there I'd like to see if you can go into a little bit more, but I'm going to start with your last one, the we're all in this together idea, which, yeah, we've seen the billboards, we've seen the slogans. How do you help make, you'll never get everyone, but as many residents as possible feel that? Because I know you don't do anything on social media, you stay away from it, but there's a lot of conversation about people who say, no, we're not all in this together. We have our freedoms, we shouldn't be doing what the government says, we're all following along as sheep, I don't want to wear a mask. And you've seen it, not necessarily here, but nationally, people getting into fights in stores. How do you, as the mayor, how does the government complex try to convince more of our residents that we are in this together and we do move forward better if we work at least a little bit more closely?
I don't know that there's any convincing to be done. I'm not sure. Do you feel as though there's convincing that can happen in that particular arena?
I think you can always give it the old college try, as we say.
Well, I think we see that in the news, and you said we haven't seen it as much here. I can say that what we've seen here are a lot of people in the vast majority that want to do their part and want to do what they can. The people that, even that I've seen out and talked to that I might know, I'll go into some place and I have my mask on, and I'll see someone that I know that I'm friendly enough with, and I'll say, "Why aren't you wearing your mask? What are you doing?" And I've had people that I know say, "Well, yeah, I was reading earlier that the Surgeon General said that the masks aren't doing any good." So there's so much mixed messaging. It's not as though people are out there with ill intent towards each other, that just the messaging is so mixed. It can be very difficult. And when you're already under a lot of stress and you're already feeling the anxiety and you're trying to do the best you can, and you're seeing kind of 3 or 4 different ways that this is being presented, it can just be confusing and overwhelming and exhausting. So I'm not angry with someone when I go out to a store and I'm wearing a mask and they're not. It doesn't make me upset. Sometimes I'll just wonder, what did I read versus what they read? Where did I see my information versus where they saw theirs? But it's nothing to get into an argument about. They're doing the best they can, and I have to assume they have the best of intentions just as I do. And I think we see small groups that make a lot of noise and make themselves seem larger than they are. But I truly believe that the vast majority of us want to see ourselves, our family, our friends, and our neighbors be healthy. I don't see a lot of people that want to see others sick and suffering. They just may be confused on the messaging, and we're doing everything we can at this level, the local level. I can't control what's happening in Michigan and Texas, and do I worry about it sometimes? I do, and I have to stop because I get a little overwhelmed with that worry.
Okay.
But I worry very much about this community. It's impossible to turn that off, and it can be really overwhelming to carry that every day, to just be so worried about everyone and the mixed messaging they're getting, and the negativity they're seeing and reading, and just hoping that people can find unity through this. So that's why the In This Together messaging is important to me. The city and the county joined together to put those billboards up, just to do something, to try to relay that importance of we are in a common problem here. And I think one of the easiest things to do is point a finger at someone or some organization. I'll go a little off the rails of the way I normally talk when we do these interviews, because we're in such an unprecedented situation. But I really think in a situation like this, where we're under this much stress, one of the knee-jerk reactions I've seen from people is just, well, maybe just blame it on your least favorite elected official, right? Okay. And I'm going to be very honest and say, I've done that. I have done that, and I've got to stop. My least favorite elected official is not responsible for a global pandemic. That's unrealistic. It's unrealistic blame.
Sure.
But we're doing what we can, all of us, working together, and we're going to continue doing that here at the local level, city, county, and trying to work with the state, and keep people safe, keep people healthy, and make the best decisions we can.
Talk a little bit about what this has done to a couple of departments in particular that are, and they're all on the front lines, but particularly, obviously, our fire department, mm-hmm. which has the paramedic unit, which is out there on a day in, day out mm-hmm. basis, and the police department, and what they're seeing, how they're doing. You've talked about getting some money in, being able to get some grants for protective equipment for businesses and things. Mm-hmm. How are they stocked for protective gear? We've heard that obviously a couple of firefighters, including the chief of police, chief of fire department, mm-hmm. ended up with COVID-19 mm-hmm. in the hospital. What's the health like of our first responder team right now? Sure,
and I'm glad you brought that up. The health, it's in a better status than it was. They're always going to be at the front lines at the highest level of risk. We put a live dashboard on our website so that we're being transparent about that. Chief Purcell issued a timeline to council members just last Monday during the council meeting. And so we are doing everything we can to source that PPE. It can be hard to come by at times to keep all of our first responders safe. But this is a really great opportunity for me to talk about the city team. I have been just overwhelmed and humbled at this entire team. When you look at the scale of a global pandemic and just the global shutdown, these pictures that you see online of empty arenas and empty places, airports empty, airplanes grounded, but here your trash is still being picked up without interruption and you're recycling. We clean all the sewer water before it goes back into the river, and there's been no boil water advisories. We don't have 9-foot tall weeds. Lord knows we've had plenty of rain to make the grass and the weeds grow. The parks are being kept up. The fire department, even through all their hardships and the spike we saw of COVID within the fire department, still operating, still functioning, still serving as fire and EMS. Our police department, all of these departments, our streets are still being repaired. Our sidewalks are still being repaired. I cannot sit here in good conscience and take a bunch of credit for how well this team has worked. That's them. They deserve all that credit. They're out there doing difficult, dirty jobs in a global pandemic and getting the work done every day. That's phenomenal. And it's really humbling to sit in this position and to have the privilege of working with that kind of team. Because what more could you ever ask for? Our transit has been running.
Yes.
And then we made transit free. So that caused an uptick in ridership. So, our transit drivers, but they're still there and they're still doing the job. That's phenomenal. I just can't say enough great things about the women and men that work for this city and have just been there every day doing their job. And I will take no credit for that. That's them. It's all them. So it just, what a fantastic group of individuals that we are just fortunate to have them choosing their career to serve Richmond, because we'd be in a completely different position if that passion wasn't there. It's great to see.
During this time, you've had a couple of department heads change. Jim Branham retired. Mm-hmm. You have a new police chief. Want to talk about that selection?
Yeah, it was hard to see Jim go. We all dearly loved Jim Branham. We still do. He just has decided to retire. Mm-hmm. Wish him the very best in retirement. That was a hard discussion when he came in here and told me that it was time to retire, because I said, I want what's best for you in your life. But I also don't want to see you go. I mean, we really enjoyed working together very much. So we gave Jim a proper send-off and went through a very lengthy process to select a new police chief, just as I did when I first became mayor. It's a very transparent process. I go and I speak to all the roll calls, first, second, and third shift, and let them know the process is open. Now, in the police department, you have to be merited to apply for the position of chief. So only a select number of officers can apply for the position. As mayor, I can just appoint a chief, but I think it's more important to go through a process. So I go to each of those individual roll call meetings where the officers gather, let them know that position is open, my expectations as we go through the process and the deadline for submission. And the big message in that process was, I'm completely open to anyone that wants to write a letter of recommendation for an individual to be chief, but what I don't want to see is an email or a letter why someone shouldn't be. Let's support all the candidates, because we're all still going to be a department after the chief is selected. This is not a time for division and politicking and circling of the wagons. This is a time to support all the candidates that are stepping up. So there was a preliminary round of interviews, and then a group of those individuals were selected to go to the final round, which goes before my leadership development team, and that's a big panel interview. And from that process rose formerly Major Mike Britt, now Chief Britt, and he was appointed chief. And you work your whole police career hoping to someday rise to that level, and he got to be appointed chief in a room of 4 people during a pandemic. It is not ideal. It is not ideal. Memorable, but not ideal. So he jumped right in, and he's been doing a great job. He's got 2 great majors. Major John Bales is continuing to serve. What a tremendous officer he is. And now Major Ali Tunich has stepped up into the other major position that Major Britt previously held. So we have a great administration in our police department, and they're moving forward. The other department head change was on our sanitation department. Right. While we're talking about law enforcement, Brian Erden was a Richmond police officer for 20 years, had FBI training, had earned his MBA during his time as a police officer, was ready to retire, put in for his retirement, and was ready to put that MBA to work. And it just happened to come at a time where we needed a sanitation superintendent, and he was very committed to staying with the city and stepped into that role after that lengthy process and did a fantastic job as a sanitation superintendent. We had a great working relationship, but he came to me and said that he had made the decision after a lot of thought and a lot of discussion with his family to return to law enforcement. He said, I thought that my time there was done, but I've learned now that that's where my heart will always be, and that's where I will be the happiest. And, I can't argue with that, I'm here in this chair because this is where I want to be. This is what would make me happiest to do with my talents and my passion. And if somebody sits in front of me at the table and says, I know where my heart is and where I need to be serving, well, then that's where you should be. So we wish Brian the very best, and Pat Smoker is our interim sanitation superintendent as we go on the search for a new director of that department. And it's going to be a little slow in this process,
Sure.
But we'll get there. We'll find the right person, and we'll move forward.
Will we be able to keep Brian Irvin in the city?
That's a good question. I think that's going to be up to him. He's weighing some of his decisions and options, and so we'll see where he lands.
Okay. You mentioned being able to have the medical professionals speak to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Question came up on a program that we do, Ask the Doctors, about why the pool wasn't opening.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne County's health officer, David Jetmore, answered that he didn't feel that opening up on Memorial Day, as the governor had indicated, would work. He wanted an additional couple of weeks, but the decision's been made to close the pool for the summer. If you go south of us down to Fayette County, they're opening theirs with a little splash. So people are wondering, what's up?
The only thing that I guess bugs me a little about the pool conversation is the assumption that we would sit here on this side in these offices and just irrationally wave our hand and say, oh, let's close that pool. That is heartbreaking to us. We worked so hard to get some dollars funded into that pool. They're building a brand new slide.
Yeah.
We have these jobs because we're so passionate about how we can serve the community. We have been talking about that new slide probably more than the kids. We have planned that, we have designed that, we have gone through color schemes. That's all hand selected. That Richmond red flume that comes down there with the colors that match the dream court on the steps. And for us to have to sit down and face that reality is heartbreaking. That's not why we're here. We're not here to keep people from doing something that they enjoy all summer long. But we're in a crisis. And for us to talk to our medical professionals who say it would be best to reevaluate that on June 14th, because we don't know where we're going to be at that point. And there's an assumption that ours is the only pool that will close for the summer. That's an assumption. No one knows that.
Right.
Because we don't know what that advisement's going to be on the 14th, and we don't know who's going to be in a position to still open their pool. So maybe we'll be the only pool that's closed. Maybe we won't.
The same way some summer camps are opening, some are not.
Right. And so there's also that assumption, well, the Richmond Municipal Pool, well, it's going to be the only pool closed. No one knows that right now. But to unpack that a little bit, to bring the viewers into our discussions, we have to hire lifeguards.
Right.
We have to have concessions and bathrooms and showers and drinking fountains and handrails and a slide, and that is a lot. And we have to make a promise to the community that if we're going to have that amenity open, that you and your family will be safe. And that is a huge promise to make, and a huge financial investment to make that promise. Having a pool means the possibility of having life-saving measures. That could mean mouth-to-mouth or other CPR type measures in a pool. Those are unfortunate circumstances that we don't want to have happen,
right,
but they're still a possibility. And we have to be able to ensure that can happen in this climate. Not knowing if we would even be able to open, and making the investment in the chemicals and the hiring and the staffing and the stocking and then the sanitization, that's way too much. The pool financially is not it doesn't run in the green as it is. It's a service we provide to the community at a loss. But that's fine because it's an amenity that the community deserves. But to incur further loss at a time when we could be seeing reductions in tax collection and income tax collection, it's too heavy a financial burden to take on. And the worst thing we could do is promise the community that this will be a safe place. Keep in mind, that when there are positive tests, there's tracer data done that kind of tries to trace back to where it originated.
Sure.
And if we were to open the pool and there was tracer data done that showed that the outbreak was at the pool, how would we ever reassure confidence in moving forward, ever? When we promise you that an amenity is open and safe, we want to keep that promise. And if we can't 100% assure that, then it's not a good idea to have it open. So I get it. It's a terrible thing. I hate it. I hate every minute of it. But it's what has to happen. It's what we're doing for the health and safety of the community, so that we can ensure that every step we take is carefully taken. I can't change it, but I do hate it.
Is that the same conversation that affected JUCO? Again, we're talking about kids, we're talking
Yes.
about safety, we're talking about the fact that
Absolutely.
Boys and Girls Club of Wayne County has found a way to begin to have some face-to-face programming this summer. They are taking a lot of precautions, obviously nowhere near the scope of membership that they have, but it also affected JUCO in that way. Was there not a way that you all thought you could continue to hold a program that has been going on for, wow, long time?
It's been going on a long time, and we look forward to getting back to it. But it becomes an issue again of hiring and bringing in part-time people, and we have to keep those individuals safe. We have to ensure that there are precautions in place for them, and then as the families bring their kids in, we have to ensure that they're going to be safe, and that's a lot to take on. And so we're taking that on in other areas. We're trying to keep our other amenities open and running. We're bringing our farmers market back. That's a huge undertaking, because that's another promise that we're making. If we're going to open the farmers market, we have to assure it's done in a way that we are all safe. I am a frequenter of the farmers market. I love the farmers market. If I'm going to go to the farmers market, I want to know that I will be safe at the farmers market. So we have to make those decisions. Where can we invest our time and our dollars to keep the community safe through our amenities that the Parks Department offers, and where do we have to mitigate that risk? And we're gonna get that farmers market open, but the pool and JUCO will have to wait until next year.
Talk about for me for a minute then, and we're going to travel that road a little bit farther with you, where your belief is that the government should step in and tell people what to do and how to do, and the government feeling that it needs to keep people safe. Isn't it better, some would say, to open the pool and let people decide and make that decision for themselves and their family if they want to take that risk, as opposed to telling them and deciding for them that that risk isn't theirs to take? It's their freedom.
I get that. I would say in the pool in particular, with it coming as a loss every year as it is, we rely on a certain number of attendants to keep it going. We don't want to see the pool get into such a financial situation that it's not sustainable any longer. So if we did make the investment... What's that?
Golf course.
The golf course. The Glen Miller Golf Course is a perfect example of how it's now a decommissioned golf course. Now it's walking trails. So if we make the investment in the chemicals and the sanitization and keeping everyone safe and the hiring of the lifeguards, and we do all that, and the consumer confidence isn't there, and people say, I don't know that I feel safe in that environment, and they're not there, then we've really gotten ourselves into a much bigger pinch. And we could be looking at the future sustainability of that amenity. Why put it at that level of jeopardy? So again, I see what you're saying in some of those terms, and I think some of those decisions will be made when it comes to going out to restaurants and going out to other establishments as they open. But we have to make our own decisions internally as to what we can afford and what we're able to do and the services we can provide. And we operate very judiciously with tax dollars, and so there is not a large pool of money to rely on if we get ourselves into a bad situation with the decisions we make on something like that. So we have to make the right decisions for future sustainability, and I think we do have to make decisions over public health. I do. We have to do what we can. I have to be at peace with that and make sure that I'm doing things that are keeping our community safe. I don't want to knowingly ever put anybody at risk. I can't make a personal peace with that. I couldn't go to bed at night thinking maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe that's going to put people at risk because, sometimes when you're out in the built environment around you, you will defer your safety to the environment around you and say, well, I trust this environment is keeping me safe, right? You ever ridden a roller coaster? You get on there and it's scary, but you think, well, surely they're testing this thing and the screws are all tight and the bolts are on, but I trust this place. And if that's the attitude that people are going to have when they come into some of our amenities, then we need to do our part to make sure that we've fulfilled that promise. That's important to me. And if we can't fulfill it 100%, then we need to back off and wait until we can. So it's going to continue to be a topic all summer. We knew that when we made the decision. And the way things are going now, it's going to be 52 degrees all summer. So we'll even see if it gets hot enough where it's an issue at the rate we're going right now.
Okay, it's only been a couple of days. Take a deep breath. Everything is green. You'll be cutting your grass this weekend. You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're spending some time with Richmond Mayor Dave Snow in his office. You've been talking about the financial end of this. We are at the end of May, heading quickly toward June, and it's budget time again. You all are probably sitting down with your department heads. You probably have been for a while, talking about what the next year's budget looks like, 2021. It's a crapshoot. Obviously, the county's doing the same thing, but talk about where your planning at this moment lies. Are you going into some of these discussions, looking at your department heads, going, listen, we need to consider cutting 5% here, we need to start with budgets that are 10% less? What is your thought process heading into this?
We have not put percentages behind that, but we've already had several discussions about taking a conservative approach. But we are also meeting about just this year's budget and what could the end of this year look like and what could next year look like. So we have had several meetings with department heads all the way around, and we continue to look at ways that we can, we're always, I said judicious earlier, because we always are. We try to be very careful. We almost always come in under our budget every year, and we want to do that to a further extent this year. One of the line items we're looking at throughout departments this year is travel and training. Most of the training seminars have been canceled. We're already almost halfway through the year. Right. We're not even sure when some of those will be rescheduled. So how can we repool some of those dollars? Some of our contractual services, as other organizations have closed down that may be out of state, how can we cut some of those dollars and some of those costs? We also have some of our capital purchases. Some of that's been slowed, so we're talking about repooling some of those dollars. So we're having those discussions about this year. And then all of us preparing as we get into our budget discussions for 21, taking a very conservative look at the 21 budget. Emily Palmer, our city controller, stays in close contact with our financial advisors and our counterparts at the state, as everyone collectively tries to kind of wrap their heads around the repercussions that cities and towns will feel across the state of Indiana through what this has done to property tax, income tax collection, and things like that. So we're still waiting to see what that's really going to look like. It's very nebulous right now. Once we have a better handle on it, then we can start tacking some of the percentages and some of the marks on there. We do know there will be a shortfall. There's no question. So how do we prepare for that shortfall? The city is in a good financial position now, and so we're ready to weather a storm. And the good news is we know it'll have a beginning and an end. We just have to be ready this year and maybe in the next year or two, because it'll be delayed as it comes to us, to be ready to weather that storm while still serving our community. We still have to be out there fixing streets and sidewalks and serving the community. So we'll continue to manage that as we get more information.
Talk a little bit about what, and I've learned to really dislike the term, but reopening is like for the city building. We're sitting here and we're recording this on, I'm not even sure what day it is, I think the 20th or something like that. This will air on like the 28th. The city building probably still won't be open to the public at that point. It's probably mid-June, I think, that's happening. How do you see that happening? Because you've had a number of your staff even working remotely, so they haven't even been in the building.
Right.
When will the public be able to get back into the public space? What will they look like? What type of restrictions are you think are going to be in place when that happens?
Well, the city building has not been 100% closed to the public. We have been open with limited access. There are still some permitting procedures that have had to happen.
Listen, there's barriers. I can't just drive into any
You're
opening.
right. No, you're right. I just didn't want to give the impression that we've been closed.
No, you haven't been closed.
Yeah, we still have had people coming up to permitting and inspections. That was one of the reasons that I wrote the executive order to suspend the transit fees. The transit fares, the bus passes,
right,
because we had a lot of people coming in to purchase those. And we thought, well, we can mitigate a lot of risk by just suspending fares. So we did that. We have a credit union in the building for our city employees. They've reduced their hours. So we've tried to cut way back on the number of people coming in and out the door. But we still have had some that come in and trickle in and out. We will be looking to reopen probably mid-June. Is when we'll start phasing in our departments and our employees will start to return back into the workplace. Our labor force at the peak of this, when people were really dispersed at the highest amount, our labor force was on a rotational schedule in places. Most of them are now back in place and getting their work done. Our administrative staff, a lot of them are still working from home, but they'll be phasing back in between now and mid-June. And as we get everybody back in their offices, we'll be able to start opening up the departments and reserving the community at full capacity again. But we know it's going to look different. We moved all of the traffic, the pedestrian traffic, into the police department doors on the bottom floor. It's actually served us really well. And so we've had a lot of discussions about continuing that model moving forward. Okay. We have a couple of issues to work through to make that sustainable for a long term. But that's been a really good model, keeping everybody through one passage into the building for a lot of reasons. And so we're looking at maintaining that and shifting some of our parking around and making it easier for people to just start coming in that door. But we'll try to keep some of the precautionary measures in place to make sure that everyone feels safe when they come in the building and that our team feels safe. So you'll see all that start. I would say about mid-June is really when you'll really start to see some of that happening. Unless something were to change, the advice would change from medical professionals. Okay. It looks like right now we're holding kind of steady. And so if the predictions are true and as we move into the warmer months things begin to lull, that'll give us the opportunity to start bringing some of this back. But there's so many unknowns. But that's the plan right now.
Before I step into one more area, looking forward, the 4th of July fireworks have been postponed. They haven't been canceled, they've been postponed, moved to Labor Day. Is there a date somewhere on the calendar circle that says, okay, because of the work, because of the situation, we have to relook at that? What is the date where that gets relooked at and people know for sure whether that is going to be able to happen or not?
For the Labor Day fireworks?
Yep.
I don't want to speak for American Legion Harry Ray Post 65. I will assume that they have those plans in place should things change between now and
But they'll have to coordinate with the city,
right,
fire,
absolutely,
that type
absolutely.
of thing, police.
And we'll just have to take that in as a group advisement. But a huge thanks to them. I'm passionate about those fireworks and the work they do to put those on. I've talked about it at length. But it's wonderful of them to postpone that and not cancel that. That's a huge amount of work and scheduling and investment. And they're dedicated to giving that to this community every year. So just a big thanks to Harry Ray Post 65 for still wanting to provide that. It'll be important that we do find a way to celebrate July 4th. That's an important day for our country. So we'll have to find a way to still make that day special and important. But we'll hold off on the fireworks celebration until a later time. And that's okay. So hopefully things will be at a phase then that we'll be able to do that without restrictions and issues, and let's just continue to hope that that's the case, Eric. Let's not plan for anything other than the best case scenario.
I'm not planning. I'm just asking the questions so that people know there is a thought process in place. That's all I get to sit here.
Well, the advisement is continuous and will continue, and the pandemic task force continues to meet, and our health professionals continue to monitor all this closely. So there will be advisement along the way. I don't think it'll be a surprise. It'll be something that either is trickling up leading to that or a projection is leading to it. I don't think it would be the weekend before that we say, oh no. this is all,
We'll see it, people can feel it.
Right, exactly. And I think if that's something that happened, we would see it coming,
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Richmond Mayor Dave Snow. I'm going to kind of, again, twist just a little bit.
Okay.
And just to kind of get your thoughts on a couple of things. After the crash, whatever it is people want to call it, around 2008, there was a comeback. The economy came back, even though people felt it wouldn't. And some people who were hurting before that maybe got brought along when things got a little bit better. There were jobs that came. We still have some jobs coming in. People are hurting once again. Unemployment levels are even higher now than they were then, some say. And we still had members of this community that were hurting. Talk about the government's role, if there is one, in trying to bring some of those community members along as this next recovery, if we want to call that, begins to happen, so that things are as equitable as possible, as equitable as you can make them in this particular recovery growth. This is an area where we still had a high amount of poverty. We had a high amount of free and reduced lunch in the school. There were jobs, but we still had people hurting. How do we make this better for more members of our community?
Well, and some of that is, going to be looking into a crystal ball, because we just don't know what the next 3 and 6 months hold. If we're, the work we're doing right now, and we've been on this diligently right out of the gate to secure dollars and to secure measures to support the businesses in their rebounding efforts. That's one of the quickest and most effective ways that we can jump out right in the front. So as they rebound, that market can come back, and hopefully people can be back into the workforce.
But we know that sometimes those dollars don't always flow evenly, fairly to begin with. There were a number of small businesses that got passed over for large businesses that ended up with 20 million, 30 million, not locally, but still, whether they're inside the downtown area, outside the downtown area, there are still businesses and individuals that maybe don't see the change, the growth, the way it should. Is there a role in government in trying to create a level playing field?
Well, there will certainly be a role. What part will play in that as we get to that point, I think, is yet to be defined. But there's always a role. There's always a part and a piece to play. But I think you bring up one of many points that we're all collectively discussing as we move into what's going to be a new reality. The disparities that this has highlighted, are many. There are a lot. And I think it will reshape our thinking moving forward, particularly for younger people that are going through this, that grew up in the environment that we and those older than us created, and they're thinking a different environment would mitigate the harm this has caused on many fronts. And what I'm talking about are conversations that I've had with several people. One in particular was, this has been really a scary time for people in extended care facilities. They are at huge risk and vulnerability, and a huge thanks to those people that work in those facilities that are efforting to keep those people safe. There's a very old American model, if you go way back, where people all sort of aged together in large houses. Grandma was still in the house, and grandpa and mom and dad and the kids, and we don't do that anymore. We sort of changed the American model to that mom and dad and the 2.3 kids per household. But
there were 7 in mine, so I don't know about 2.3, man. I'm sorry.
Will this bring a change to that way of thinking? Will this bring a change to people looking at those models and saying, maybe I want to do this a little bit different now. Maybe this reshapes how I think about this. And I think what you're bringing up fits into that. There's going to be a lot of discussions about how we do a lot of things, from how we travel to how we shop to how we work to how we congregate. And we're going to have a lot of discussions about how to reshape those things to reduce that harm in the future, both personally and economically. The next time we face this, we're not going to be able to just pull levers around the globe and shut everything down again. I don't see that working again.
Right.
There will be more people, I think, that will say, we can't do this twice.
Right.
So we have to change the way we think, and we have to change the way we congregate in small ways to reduce that harm so that things can continue. And I know we'll be able to do that. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take some growing pains. But we'll be able to do that. And we'll find our role in those things as we move forward, as a government. But not only as a government. I mean, yes, I'm the mayor of the city, but that's not my only role. I've lived in the city my entire life and served in a capacity of ways, from serious to silly, because that's what I love to do. It's going to reshape all those things.
Aren't you scared about some of those silly pictures getting out again?
No. Is there any more to find? Haven't they found them all? I mean, whatever. I think that somebody's been all the way to like page 8 of Google to find those, right? And they're never going to stop. They're just going to keep going. It's going to change all of them, you know. And I worry about all those little things and how we'll do all those things different from now on. But they're important things. They have to continue, right? We have to have the ways that we all choose to congregate and socialize and enjoy our culture and our amenities and enjoy each other. How will we do them a little bit different now? So that when these things happen, we don't feel such a sense of loss. I can honestly tell you that I've gone through a sense of almost grief over just losing all these things so quickly that are very important to me, and just being locked up in the house. But I know people have it a lot worse than me, so I don't get too wrapped up in it. But it's just been hard. Those things have to return. You have an important one. You hold the 21 for Fun event, which I love, and that was another one that hit the chopping block. Yeah. And I'm sure that was painful for you to have to make that decision.
Rescheduled, but we're not sure whether it's going to come off. But mark August 7th on your calendar, just 7th. In case. We're talk about being hopeful.
Right.
We didn't cancel it, we postponed it. So we're hoping that we get there.
But that's another great example of, you know, those aren't knee-jerk reaction decisions. Those decisions hurt to make. You don't want to take that away. You want to be able to provide that. You want to have that gathering and see those people having fun and being together, and that's what we do as a community. So we'll have to find ways to continue to do these things in the new way that lies ahead. But we'll get through that.
I get a couple of time checks here, which is probably going to tell me we're down to 9 minutes or so. So a couple of things.
Really? It went that fast?
It went that fast.
Man.
Told you. I know. That's why we normally do 90 minutes.
Because I never shut up. Is that why?
No. Since we're talking about the financial piece and talking about counting and talking about moving forward, I'm going to give you a minute or so, because how the census is counted and its importance continues. Mm-hmm. What do you know about that? I don't think they're going to be knocking on doors trying to get people. Are there ways that you're hearing that community members can still make sure that they and their families are counted? Because that's going to be important for the next 10 years in being able to leverage the dollars for the communities.
Yeah. You should have gotten your mailer. If you have that mailer, it should have the phone number on it. It should have the website. I went and took the census, and I timed it. I wanted to know, is this really going to take me a couple minutes, or is that kind of some hype? So I opened my laptop and I started my timer on my phone, and it was less than 3 minutes. In less than 3 minutes, I was in and out. So it's quick. So please go take the census. That's important. But while we're talking about that, I do want to mention one more thing. We shot a small video that will be out probably before this airs, and you may have already seen it, or you can go find it. I went yesterday and took my COVID-19 test, and that is really important. Huge thanks to our state health department for making that available throughout the state of Indiana. The most important thing I can say, the quick and dirty of it, is it's free, it's walk-in, you don't have to schedule an appointment, you don't have to have insurance, you don't have to sign up for insurance, you don't have to go through any rigmarole or any obstacles. Take your photo ID, make sure you wear a mask, and go in and take that test, even if you don't have any symptoms. The larger the data set, then the better our health professionals can advise us. So if you didn't see the video, you know, I wanted to be really open and candid about how worried I was about taking that test. First, I'd seen the videos of other people taking it, looked really
That looked
uncomfortable.
painful.
Oh, I know. And I was one of the people that said, I'm not taking that test. I'll just deal with the symptoms because I don't need to know, and that looks terrible. That's the wrong mindset. I was wrong. I need to admit when I'm wrong.
Okay.
It's more important to go in there. I started to say to sit down, but you don't even sit down. To go in there and to take that test and be a part of that data collection. And also to set that example. I need to set that example. So I was very open in my video and said I'm pretty concerned about the discomfort of this. Mm-hmm. And then I'm worried about testing positive. Of course I'm worried about that. I have no symptoms, but I don't want to be an asymptomatic carrier of this.
Sure.
So I went in, took the test. It took minutes. I would say it's uncomfortable, but nowhere near what I built it up to in my mind. Nowhere near. If you could see what that was in my head.
I have no doubt because I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've gone.
I had a Halloween movie playing in my head, like what this was going to be. And it was over so quick, and it was not that bad. So go take the test. It's now at the former Elder Beerman site. You can sign up online if you want. It's preferred, but you don't have to. You can just walk in. They're fine with that. Take your photo ID. Again, no charge. Don't have to have any symptoms. And find out. And I think that's a really smart thing for us all to be doing. So go take that test.
We're at 3 minutes, so there's not a lot of unpacking that can be done, but real quickly, you just mentioned the former Elder Beerman building. Mm-hmm. Are you hearing anything? Are there any nibbles? I know there's only certain things you can tell us, but
sure.
I know people are going, I know that's not going to stand like that for a long time, right?
Yeah, I know. And this situation has brought a slowing to that, but absolutely, there were many really hopeful conversations that were happening. And so we're just trying to get everything back up and running so that we can get back to those conversations. But since these are our closing minutes, we can always have more discussions later about the Elder Beerman building. It's just a great time for me to thank doctors, nurses, essential workers, first responders, city laborers, all these people, our county elected officials, our city council, everybody at Wayne EMA and 911 and extended care representation and Red Cross, just across the board. I just can't say enough about how everyone has worked so hard to do the best they can for this community. And so much credit to the teamwork and the collaboration and the city team's hard work and the work they put in. So there's so many people that have played a role in serving this community through this crisis. And I just want to send a huge thanks to all of them. And thank you, Eric. You're keeping the community informed. You're doing this. This is big. Thank you and Ryan both. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Glad to do it. Thank you. Greatly appreciate the time. I will see you Tuesday evening.
I'm excited.
We are wrapping up this In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Our thanks again to Richmond Mayor Dave Snow for being with us. Do want to remind you that Tuesday is primary election day here. I know it's June 2nd, but it is primary election day here in Indiana. So if you're so inclined and you haven't done it absentee, you can go. Where you can vote is on the screen. Those places will be open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I invite you to join us Tuesday evening, beginning at 6 p.m. on WGTV as we bring you our In Focus Election Night special. My guest will be Richmond Mayor Dave Snow, Wayne County Commissioner Ken Poust. They will be joining us for, we think, 2 hours, although it might be a little bit more as things will be a little bit slower in the counting. We'll have some conversation. We'll be taking some of your questions, so definitely join us there. You can see this program in repeat beginning tonight at 10:30. Thanks for watching, and as always, I wish you well. This broadcast of In Focus has been made possible through the support of the Richmond Art Museum. Mark your calendar for June 27th and 28th to enjoy the annual Secret Garden Tour. Take in beautiful local gardens and be sure to check out the Garden Boutique featuring unique ironwork for your garden landscaping needs. For more information, visit richmondartmuseum.org.